The crystalline spires of the Rotarian Central Command pierced the violet skies of Crystallos Prime, their surfaces refracting starlight in precise mathematical patterns. High Commander 6427 stood motionless, their crystalline form pulsing with deep purple light as they processed the latest reports from their observation fleet. Impossible. Zix 427's thoughts resonated through the chamber's crystal walls. The data streams showed yet another human colony establishing itself on what the Rotarians had deemed an uninhabitable world. The humans had not only survived but were thriving in an environment that the Rotarians' most advanced computational models had declared unsuitable for intelligent life. The Rotarians had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 cycles, their crystal tech civilization expanding through the cosmos with mathematical precision. Every decision, every expansion, every technological advancement followed the immutable laws of their crystalline logic. Their society was perfect, ordered, and absolute, until they discovered humanity. Humans had emerged from their solar system barely 2 centuries ago, their primitive fusion drives and patchwork space stations drawing amused attention from Rotarian observers. But that amusement turned to confusion, then concern, as humans defied every prediction model the Rotarians had constructed. Where Rotarians spent decades calculating the perfect approach to colonizing a world, humans would arrive with minimal preparation and simply adapt. Their solutions were often crude, occasionally elegant, but always effective. They built homes in volcanic regions by harvesting geothermal energy, established underwater cities in gas-giant moons, and even constructed orbital habitats in radiation-soaked star systems that the Rotarians had marked as permanently quarantined. First contact is now inevitable. Zix 427 communicated to the High Council. The humans have discovered 3 of our observation posts in the past solar cycle alone. Their expansion patterns are chaotic, unpredictable. The council chamber hummed with crystalline frequencies as the other members processed this information. Counselor Ver 891, their form shimmering with cautionary amber light, spoke first. Perhaps it is time we guide these humans, show them the proper way to expand. Their methods are inefficient, dangerous. Their methods work, interrupted Zix 427, causing a discordant ripple through the chamber. Their colony success rate is 78.3%, compared to our 91.2%. But they establish colonies at 17 times our rate. The mathematical conclusion is uncomfortable. The council chamber grew still. In all their recorded history, no species had ever approached the Rotarians' level of achievement. Their crystalline technology, built on perfect mathematical principles and powered by cosmic harmonics, was the pinnacle of civilization, or so they had believed. The decision to initiate formal contact passed through the council with unprecedented speed. Within a day, the most advanced diplomatic vessel in the Rotarian fleet, the Harmonic Resonance, was dispatched to the human colony of New Terra. The human diplomatic team that met them showed none of the awe or deference the Rotarians had expected. Instead, they were greeted with enthusiastic curiosity and a barrage of questions that their diplomatic algorithms struggled to process. "Your ship, it's using crystalline quantum computing, isn't it?" asked Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead human scientist, her eyes bright with interest. "We've been experimenting with similar technology, though we can't grow crystals with the same precision you've achieved. Yet." The "yet" sent uncomfortable vibrations through the Rotarian diplomatic team. The humans should not have even been able to recognize their technology, let alone be working on their own version of it. As the diplomatic meetings progressed, the fundamental differences between the two species became increasingly apparent. The Rotarians presented their careful analysis of human expansion, pointing out the risks and inefficiencies in their methods. The humans listened politely, then proceeded to explain why they chose to break the rules. "Space is too vast for perfect solutions," explained Admiral James Rodriguez, his weathered face creasing in a smile that the Rotarians' emotional analysis subroutines failed to properly categorize. "Sometimes you have to improvise, take calculated risks. It's not about finding the perfect answer. It's about finding one that works well enough, fast enough. Such philosophy was anathema to the Rotarian way of thinking. Yet they could not deny the results. Human ships, while less advanced, were more versatile. Their colonies, while less optimized, were more resilient. Their technology, while less elegant, was remarkably adaptable. As the first diplomatic session drew to a close, Zix 427 made a disturbing calculation. At their current rate of advancement, humans would surpass Rotarian technology in several key areas within 50 years. Their chaotic, innovative approach to problems, combined with their rapid iteration and willingness to take risks, created a development curve that defied Rotarian predictive models. We must guide them. Ver 891 insisted in the privacy of the harmonic resonance. Their potential for disruption is too great. The galaxy has functioned under Rotarian guidance for 10,000 cycles. We cannot allow chaos to spread. Zix 427's crystalline form pulsed with complex patterns of light as they processed this statement. And if they refuse our guidance? The question hung in the ship's crystalline chambers, unanswered but understood. The Rotarians had maintained galactic order through careful calculation and precise action. Humanity represented an unknown variable in their cosmic equation, one that threatened to unbalance millennia of perfectly ordered progress. As the harmonic resonance prepared to depart New Terra, Dr. Chen approached Zix 427 with one final question. "We've noticed your observation posts near several of our colonies," she said, her tone friendly but her eyes sharp. "We understand the need to study potential allies, but perhaps it's time for more direct cooperation." The implied message was clear. Humans knew they were being watched, and they were confident enough to address it openly. Zix 427's crystalline matrix hummed with uncertainty as they formulated a diplomatic response, knowing that this interaction would set the tone for future relations between their species. The first contact between humanity and the Rotarians had been made. But as their ship departed New Terra, Zix 427 could not shake the calculation that this meeting marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in the galactic order. The question was no longer if change would come, but how much chaos it would bring to their perfectly ordered universe. The incident that shattered the fragile peace began in the Proxima Centauri system. A human research vessel, the Stellar Pioneer, had been conducting experiments with a new form of quantum tunneling technology. The Rotarian observation post recorded energy signatures that violated 17 different safety protocols established over millennia of careful scientific advancement. They must be stopped immediately. Ver 891's crystalline form pulsed with urgent red frequencies as they presented the data to the High Council. "Our models show a 72.4% chance their experiments will create a cascading quantum disruption. They risk not just their own lives, but the stability of local spacetime." But before the Rotarians could intervene, the humans succeeded. The Stellar Pioneer created a stable micro-wormhole, albeit using methods that the Rotarians' mathematical models insisted should have resulted in catastrophic failure. The achievement sent shockwaves through Rotarian society. On Earth's orbital command, Dr. Chen reviewed the angry diplomatic transmission from the Rotarian High Council with a mixture of amusement and concern. "They're demanding we cease all quantum tunneling research," she informed Admiral Rodriguez. "They've attached several thousand pages of mathematical proofs showing why our approach is fundamentally flawed and dangerous." Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, his weathered face thoughtful. "And yet here we are, with a working prototype that their equations say is impossible. How's that for human ingenuity?" The Stellar Pioneer's success marked a turning point. Across human space, research teams began pushing boundaries that the Rotarians had long ago defined as absolute. They approached problems with a creativity that the crystalline beings found both fascinating and terrifying. Zix 427, now serving as chief liaison to humanity, struggled to process the rapid developments. Humans were establishing colonies and systems that Rotarian calculations had deemed uninhabitable, developing technologies that defied their mathematical models, and worst of all, succeeding where their perfect equations said they should fail. The situation reached a critical point when humans began offering their technology to other species. Young civilizations that the Rotarians had carefully been guiding along predetermined technological paths were suddenly presented with alternatives. Chaotic, imperfect, but often more immediately useful alternatives. They undermine millennia of careful progress. Ver 891 declared during an emergency council session. Their crystalline form resonated with frequencies of deep distress. 3 developing species have already adopted human-designed quantum communication systems, rather than waiting for our approved technology transition schedule. The council chamber filled with discordant harmonics as the implications became clear. The Rotarians' carefully maintained galactic order was being disrupted by human unpredictability. Their perfect mathematical progression of species development was being replaced by what they saw as dangerous shortcuts and reckless innovation. Meanwhile, humanity continued to expand and innovate, oblivious to or perhaps simply unconcerned with the growing crisis in Rotarian society. When a human colony successfully established itself in the heart of a plasma storm that the Rotarians had marked as an eternal hazard zone, the crystalline beings reached their breaking point. "We have completed our analysis," Ver 891 announced to the council. Their form pulsed with the deep purple of absolute certainty. Human advancement must be contained. Their chaos threatens the very foundation of galactic stability. For the first time in their history, the Rotarians faced a problem that their perfect equations couldn't solve. Humanity's success defied their mathematical models. Their innovations ignored established limitations, and their influence was spreading faster than any calculation had predicted. The council's decision was unanimous. The Rotarians would have to act to preserve the ordered progression of galactic civilization. They began mobilizing their fleet, their crystalline ships assembling in geometric patterns of terrible beauty. But even as they prepared for conflict, they failed to understand a fundamental truth about their adversary. Humans had thrived precisely because they didn't follow perfect mathematical progression. They succeeded not in spite of chaos, but because they had learned to harness it. The warning came from an unexpected source. Zix 427, after extensive interaction with humans, attempted to warn the council. "Our models cannot predict human behavior accurately because they operate outside our mathematical framework. This makes them not just dangerous, but potentially unbeatable through conventional means." The warning went unheeded. The Rotarian High Council, secure in their mathematical superiority, had made their decision. They would contain humanity's chaos and restore order to the galaxy, no matter the cost. As the crystalline fleet assembled, humanity's deep space sensors detected the massive movement of Rotarian ships. On Earth's orbital command, Admiral Rodriguez studied the tactical displays with grim determination. "They finally made their choice," he said quietly to Dr. Chen. "They chose order over progress." Dr. Chen nodded, her fingers already dancing over holographic controls as she initiated humanity's contingency protocols. Their mistake was thinking they could quantify the human spirit in their equations. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy. The Rotarians, with their perfect formations and mathematically optimized battle strategies, were about to learn that some forces in the universe simply couldn't be calculated. The first strike came without warning. Rotarian ships appeared in perfect geometric formations above 3 human frontier colonies, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight in dazzling patterns. Their message was simple: surrender to Rotarian guidance or face immediate neutralization. The human response surprised them. Instead of panic or immediate surrender, the colonies launched what appeared to be a chaotic and uncoordinated defense. Small ships darted out in seemingly random patterns. Civilian vessels mixed with military craft in ways that defied tactical logic. Their response lacks coherent strategy. Ver 891 observed from the command ship, "Crystal dominance." Our models predict victory within 2.3 hours. But the humans weren't following any strategy the Rotarians could recognize. As the crystalline fleet moved to engage, they discovered that the apparent chaos masked a deadly efficiency. Civilian mining vessels suddenly revealed military-grade shields. Cargo ships launched swarms of combat drones. What had seemed like panic was actually a carefully orchestrated dance of deception. Multiple hull breaches detected, resonated through the Crystal Dominance's command center. Human weapons are adapting to our crystalline matrix frequency. The Rotarians had expected their superior technology to prevail easily. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that turned their own precise nature against them. Human quantum scanners had detected the resonance frequencies of Rotarian crystal tech, and their weapons were already being modified to exploit this weakness. Admiral Rodriguez, coordinating the defense from the flagship Prometheus, watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Rotarians built their entire civilization on predictability. He told his bridge crew. That's their greatest strength and their fatal weakness. Dr. Chen, now heading the Emergency Technology Division, had worked through countless nights with her team to develop countermeasures. Their crystalline technology is perfect, she had explained. Perfect, and therefore perfectly predictable. Once you know the frequency patterns, you can disrupt them. The battle raged across 3 star systems simultaneously. Rotarian ships, their formations mathematically flawless, found themselves repeatedly outmaneuvered by human vessels that seemed to ignore standard combat logic. Where the Rotarians would calculate the optimal firing solution, humans would take impossible shots that somehow connected. Where Rotarian shields were tuned to perfect defensive frequencies, humans rapidly cycled through random patterns that couldn't be predicted. On Crystallos Prime, the High Council watched in growing alarm as their perfect equations failed to produce the expected results. Human ships were surviving hits that should have destroyed them. Their weapons were causing damage that should have been impossible. The carefully calculated battle plans were falling apart. They're not just adapting. Zix 427 observed, their crystalline form pulsing with the violet light of revelation. They're evolving their tactics in real time. Each engagement teaches them more about our capabilities, while our responses remain constrained by our mathematical models. The turning point came when a small group of human ships executed what the Rotarians later termed the impossible maneuver. Flying directly into the gravity well of a neutron star, they used its immense gravitational force to slingshot themselves behind the Rotarian fleet, emerging at velocities that Rotarian calculations had deemed unsurvivable. Stop them, Ver 891 commanded, but their perfectly organized fleet couldn't react quickly enough to the unorthodox attack. Human ships struck from angles that hadn't been accounted for in any tactical simulation. The Crystal Dominance shuddered as human weapons found their mark. Throughout the massive vessel, crystalline structures began to resonate at frequencies that threatened to tear them apart. Ver 891 watched in disbelief as their perfect formations began to crumble. Fall back, the order finally came, spreading through the Rotarian fleet in precisely timed pulses of light. Tactical withdrawal to predetermined coordinates. But even their retreat had been anticipated. Human ships had positioned themselves along mathematically optimal withdrawal routes, forcing the Rotarians to choose between predictable escape paths where humans waited in ambush or illogical routes that their tactical doctrine struggled to accommodate. In the aftermath of the first major engagement, the Rotarians were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their perfect technology, their flawless strategies, their mathematical certainty, all of it had been turned against them by human ingenuity and adaptability. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the Rotarian fleet retreat. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "But next time, they'll have to choose between their perfect calculations and survival." Dr. Chen nodded, already analyzing data from the battle. "They're learning. The question is whether they can learn fast enough. Their entire civilization is built on mathematical certainty. We're forcing them to evolve beyond that, or face extinction." The first major battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The Rotarians would return, and humanity would need every ounce of its legendary adaptability to survive. The galaxy watched and waited as two fundamentally different approaches to existence clashed among the stars. The war had raged for 6 months, and the galaxy was witnessing something unprecedented. The mighty Rotarian Empire, undefeated for 10,000 years, found itself locked in a stalemate with a species they had dismissed as primitive barely a decade ago. But humanity wasn't content with a stalemate. They were about to change the rules of engagement entirely. In a hidden research facility orbiting a black hole, Dr. Chen and her team had made a breakthrough that would reshape the conflict. They had discovered a way to not just disrupt Rotarian crystal technology, but to actively reprogram it. The implications were staggering. Their entire civilization is built on crystal matrices, Dr. Chen explained to Admiral Rodriguez via quantum link. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology relies on perfectly ordered crystalline structures. We found a way to introduce controlled chaos into those structures. The Admiral's hologram smiled grimly. Can they detect it? That's the beautiful part, Chen replied, her eyes bright with excitement. The changes appear as natural quantum fluctuations in their scanning systems. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. The Rotarians, meanwhile, were facing their own crisis. Their perfectly ordered society was showing signs of strain. The ongoing conflict with humans had introduced variables they couldn't quantify, uncertainties that their mathematical models couldn't resolve. Some younger Rotarians had begun questioning the rigid structures that had defined their civilization for millennia. Zix 427, who had warned of human unpredictability, found themselves leading a growing faction that advocated for adaptation rather than elimination. We must evolve or perish, they declared to the High Council. The humans have shown us that there are paths to advancement we never considered. The council chamber erupted in discordant frequencies. Ver 891's form pulsed with angry red light. Heresy. Our way has guided us for 10,000 years. We will not abandon perfection for chaos. But even as the Rotarians debated, humanity launched its masterstroke. During a massive Rotarian assault on the Arcturus system, human ships deployed Dr. Chen's new technology. Microscopic quantum disruptors, disguised as normal space debris, attached themselves to Rotarian vessels. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Rotarian fleet maintained its perfect formations, their crystalline ships gleaming in the starlight. Then, subtle changes began to manifest. Crystal matrices started exhibiting unexpected behaviors. Ships began responding fractionally slower than their tactical algorithms predicted. Minor systemic anomalies detected, reported the Rotarian command ship, recalibrating. But they couldn't recalibrate against what was happening. The quantum disruptors weren't damaging their systems. They were introducing minute imperfections, tiny elements of chaos that grew exponentially as the Rotarians tried to correct them. The more they attempted to impose mathematical perfection, the more their systems rebelled. Ships started moving in slightly unpredictable patterns, weapons fired at marginally incorrect angles. The perfect synchronization that had made the Rotarian fleet invincible for millennia began to break down. Admiral Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Prometheus as the massive Rotarian fleet began to show signs of disarray. Now, he ordered, and human ships surged forward in their characteristic organized chaos. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human vessels danced through the increasingly erratic Rotarian formations, their attacks precisely targeted to exploit the growing uncertainty in enemy systems. The Rotarians found themselves facing not just an external enemy, but internal chaos that defied their every attempt at control. This is impossible. Ver 891's crystalline form pulsed with patterns of panic never before seen in a Rotarian. Our systems are operating within normal parameters, but nothing is working as calculated. In the midst of the battle, something unexpected happened. A group of Rotarian ships, led by Zix 427, broke formation. Instead of maintaining their mathematically perfect attack patterns, they began adapting, learning from human tactics. These ships survived while others, clinging to their programmed perfection, fell to human attacks. The battle for Arcturus became a turning point not just in the war, but in Rotarian civilization itself. As news of the defeat spread through crystalline networks, more Rotarians began questioning their society's rigid adherence to perfect mathematical order. Dr. Chen, monitoring the battle's aftermath, made an interesting observation. "We didn't just beat them," she told Rodriguez. "We forced them to evolve. The survivors are the ones who learn to embrace a little chaos." The Admiral nodded thoughtfully. Maybe that was the real victory. Not destroying their perfect order, but showing them that imperfection isn't always a weakness. As the dust settled, the Rotarian Empire faced an internal crisis deeper than any military defeat. Their society split between traditionalists who demanded a return to pure mathematical order and progressives who saw the need for adaptation and change. Humanity had done more than win a battle. They had introduced an element of chaos into a civilization of perfect order, and in doing so, may have saved the Rotarians from their own rigidity. The war wasn't over, but its nature had fundamentally changed. The question was no longer about military victory, but about the very nature of progress and civilization itself. The crystalline spires of Crystallos Prime reflected starlight differently now. Subtle imperfections had appeared in their once perfect geometries, not as flaws but as adaptations. 1 year after the Battle of Arcturus, both humanity and the Rotarians stood at the threshold of an unprecedented transformation. The civil conflict within Rotarian society had reached its climax. Zix 427's faction, which had grown to include nearly half of the Rotarian population, had established a separate council on a colony world they named New Harmony. Their crystals pulsed with both ordered and chaotic patterns, embracing a balance that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "We have been watching humanity's progress through the wrong lens," Zix 427 addressed their followers. "We saw their chaos as a threat to order, when in fact it was the key to evolution itself. The universe is not a perfect crystal. It is a dance between order and chaos." On Earth, Dr. Chen and her team had made another breakthrough. They had found a way to integrate Rotarian crystal technology with human quantum systems, creating hybrid systems that were both stable and adaptable. The discovery offered a path forward that neither civilization could have achieved alone. Admiral Rodriguez, now heading the diplomatic initiative, prepared for a historic meeting. Representatives from both Rotarian factions and the human government would gather on a neutral space station to determine the future of their civilizations. The station itself was a symbol of the potential for cooperation. Its hull was composed of modified Rotarian crystals grown using human-designed quantum matrices. It was neither perfectly ordered nor completely chaotic, but a harmonious blend of both approaches. Ver 891, still leading the traditionalist faction, arrived first. Their crystalline form still pulsed with the pure frequencies of mathematical perfection, but even they could not deny the changes sweeping through Rotarian society. "We have calculated all possible outcomes," they announced. "Continued conflict serves no logical purpose." The meeting that followed would be remembered for millennia to come. Humans, progressive Rotarians, and traditionalists engaged in discussions that bridged the gap between mathematical precision and creative innovation. Dr. Chen presented the hybrid technology research, demonstrating how the strengths of both civilizations could be combined. "Look at this," she said, activating a holographic display. "Rotarian crystals grown with controlled imperfections don't just survive. They develop new properties we never imagined possible. They adapt, evolve, become stronger, just like living things." The demonstration had a profound effect on the traditionalist Rotarians. Their own sensors confirmed what they had been reluctant to accept: that perfect order, while beautiful, was also fragile. True strength came from the ability to adapt, to incorporate new patterns, to evolve. Zix 427 built upon this revelation. Our civilization achieved greatness through order, but we stopped growing. Humans showed us that progress requires us to embrace uncertainty, to explore the unknown, to accept that perfection is not always the answer. The negotiations lasted weeks, but finally, a new accord was reached. The Rotarian Empire would not be restored to its former rigid state. Instead, a new coalition would emerge. Traditional Rotarian systems would be gradually updated to incorporate adaptive elements, while human colonies would benefit from the stability of crystal technology. But the most significant change was philosophical. The Rotarians began to see their mathematical precision not as an end in itself, but as a tool that could be enhanced by human creativity. Humans, in turn, learned to appreciate the beauty of ordered systems and the value of careful calculation. Research facilities were established where both species could work together. The first joint project was the development of a new type of ship, one that combined Rotarian crystalline perfection with human adaptability. Its systems could shift between perfect order and controlled chaos as needed, representing the best of both civilizations. 5 years after the first contact that had sparked the conflict, the galaxy had changed. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated for 10,000 years was replaced by a more dynamic order. Young civilizations were no longer bound to follow predetermined technological paths. They could choose to learn from both human innovation and Rotarian precision. Admiral Rodriguez and 6427 stood together on the observation deck of the new Joint Fleet's flagship, watching as ships of both species maneuvered in formations that were both precise and fluid. "We nearly destroyed each other," Rodriguez mused, "all because we couldn't see that our differences were actually complementary." 6427's crystalline form pulsed with harmonious lights. Perhaps that is the greatest equation of all, that progress comes not from perfection alone, nor from pure chaos, but from the dynamic balance between them. As their ship cruised through the stars, it carried with it the promise of a new era. The Rotarians had learned that evolution required embracing uncertainty, while humanity had gained appreciation for the power of ordered systems. Together, they had discovered that the true path to advancement lay not in the triumph of one approach over another, but in the synthesis of both. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.